This video will discuss solving quadratics with quadratic formula. These are only the real solutions. I'll do another video with imaginary solutions. So x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times ac all over 2a. So that's a formula you're going to have to know in order to be able to substitute properly. You also will need to know about the standard form of a quadratic. So we've discussed this in class. So just know that you have ax squared plus bx plus c, and it's all set equal to 0. You know it's a quadratic because your highest exponent is 2. You want to look at your highest exponent. That'll tell you how many answers or solutions that you will have when you're solving. All right, so let's get started. The first thing you have to do is make sure it's in standard form. Again, standard form is shown here. And we can see that it's not in standard form, so we're going to just move some things over. And when you move it, you want to go to the side where your x squared is already positive, if possible. So I'm going to just rewrite this as 2x squared. Well, when I move anything across the equal sign, I have to change the sign. So instead of a negative 3x, it's now going to be a positive 3x. Instead of a positive 90, it's going to be a negative 90. I have an equal sign. I have to set it equal to 0. It's now in standard form. This matters because when you're trying to identify your A, B, and C, your signs will be off if you don't put it in the correct form. So A is a number only, it's 2. B, including the sign, is 3. And then C is negative 90. I'm now going to actually apply the formula, the quadratic formula, which is x is equal to negative is part of my formula. B, we just said was 3. And for the time being, until you get used to it, go ahead when you're substituting and put your the substitutions inside of parentheses. Plus or minus, this is a common error where people will forget that. Square root, b squared. So whatever you just used for b here is going to be the exact same number. So make sure you have the correct b. Minus 4 is part of your formula. A is going to be 2. So notice I'm just substituting and using parentheses every time I substitute. And C is negative 90. All of this, all of it, is divided by 2 times A. A again is 2. So in my formula, I have 2 B's. So the first 2 are going to be the same. I have 2 A's. The top and the bottom are going to be the same. And then I have 1 C. You can actually put this in the calculator to verify your answer, but I need you to show me some work. So we're going to work through it. So X is going to be negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 3 squared is 3 times 3, which is 9. Pay attention to these signs. A lot of people are thrown off by that. A negative times a negative, we know it's going to be a positive. So now all we have to do, since all of these are next to each other, that indicates we're multiplying. So 4 times 2, and then 2 times negative 90. And once we do that, that's going to be a positive 720. Combined, I'm just going to over to the side, write that that's going to be the square root of 729. I'm going to come back to that. And on the bottom, I have 2 times 2, which is 4. Now, if I were to take the square root of 729, I end up with 27. So that's a perfect square. I'm going to continue simplifying. So I have negative 3 plus or minus 27, because 27 times 27 is that. And I'm going to divide all of this by 4. If you notice, plus or minus, that's 2 different things happening at the same time. So I want to separate it. So I'm going to take negative 3 plus 27 divided by 4. And now in the numerator, if I just combine the negative 3 plus the 27, that's going to give me a positive 24 divided by 4. And I can further simplify. 24 divided by 4 is 6. And now I'm going to take that same negative 3, but this time I'm going to subtract it from 27. Take that answer and divide it by 4. So now I have negative 30 divided by 4. As in terms of a fraction, I can simplify to negative 15 over 2. And in terms of an actual decimal, it's approximately negative 7.5. So the way I want you to write your answers, sorry, let me get that in screen there, is going to be x is equal to the set of negative 7.5 and positive 6. For example 2, we'll notice it's still not in standard form. So let's just go ahead and rewrite it, meaning we're going to move this positive 23 over, that's our constant, and we're going to have to change the sign. So 11n squared minus 10n minus 23 set equal to 0. And now I just want to identify my A, B, and C. My A is 11. My B is negative 10. My C is negative 23. Once I identify that, all I have to do is put it in the formula. So X is equal to negative B. B is a negative. So keep that in mind. This is part of the formula, but B itself is a negative. Don't forget the plus or the minus. Square root, whatever I just said B is here, guess what? It's going to be the same thing here. But this one is squared because the formula says B squared minus 4. And then I'm looking for A, which is 11, and times C, which is negative 23. All of this is divided by 2 times A, which is 11. And now I'm just going to keep simplifying. Well, a negative times a negative, we'll change that to a positive 10, plus or minus the square root of a negative number squared is simply a positive number. So make sure when you're using the calculator that you use your parentheses. Otherwise, it's going to give you the wrong answer. Now, negative times a negative is going to result in a positive. Don't forget that. But I have to multiply all of these numbers together. So I have 4 times 11 times negative 23. And that's going to give me 1,012. So when I simplify this radical by adding 100 to it, over to the side, I just like to keep it all together. It's going to be 1,112. And this is all divided by 2 times 11, which is 22. And I can further simplify this over here. So if I put in a calculator the square root of this, I'm going to get, well, let's just look at factors. I know I can take 4 times 278. I cannot further simplify the square root of 278, so I'm going to have to leave it, but I can further simplify the square root of 4, it's 2. But if you were to put it in the calculator, it's going to automatically tell you 2 radical 278. I just want to show you how to show your work. So X, and I see that I could possibly simplify this, so what I'm going to do is take it apart, and I'm going to put it in A plus or minus BI form, where A is the real part. And we haven't talked about this yet, but BI is going to be the imaginary part. So I want to put it in that format. So 10 over 22. Notice this fraction bar goes with everything. So I have 2 different fractions separated by this plus or minus. And then over here, I just said that it's simplified to 2 radical 278, but it is also divided by 22. I can further simplify this because I can divide both the numerator and the denominator by 2 on both sides. So when I do that, this now becomes 5 over 11. So X is equal to plus or minus. Now the 2 divided by 2 just goes away, so I don't have to put a 1. It's understood that there's a 1 outside of that radical. And again, 22 divided by 2 is 11. And I'll notice I cannot simplify any further. This is the way I want you to write your answer. However, you will sometimes see it written as 5 plus or minus radical 278 all over 11. That's acceptable as well. I just prefer this way. It is clear it's in this form. And then the last example, again, it is not written in standard form. So I'm going to have to move that 7x over and change the sign. So I have x squared minus 7x plus 1 equals 0. Do not drop that equal sign. And then I'm going to identify my A, B, and C. Well, if nothing is there in front of the x squared, it's understood to be a positive 1. B is a negative 7. And C is a positive 1. You have to keep up with those signs. So now x is going to equal negative b, which is negative 7, plus or minus square root of that same b squared minus 4 times a times c, all divided by 2 times a. Simplifying it, a negative times negative will become a positive, plus or minus, a negative that's squared will become a positive, so negative 7 squared is simply 49. Now this time I only have a negative sign. I don't have to change it to a positive, but it's negative 4 times 1, and then that answer times another 1. So you're multiplying all 3 numbers. That gives me a negative 4. Over to the side, I'm just going to simplify my radical, which is 49 minus 4, which is 45. And I know that some factors are 9 times 5. If I take the square root of 9, I get a perfect square of 3. And if I take the square root of 5, I can't do anything, so I have to leave it. And all of that is over 2, 2 times 1. So further simplifying, I see that I can't simplify, well, let's just keep it as one fraction for now. So 7 plus or minus, and now I have my perfect square of 3. So 3 times radical 5 all over 2. Again, this is an acceptable answer. However, I personally do not want it that way. I want it separated. So 2 fractions, 7 over 2 plus or minus 3 radical 5 all over 2. You have 2 answers. You have one that's plus, you have one that's minus. So you could write it this first way, like this, the way that I boxed it, or you could literally just write it out separate. So you could say that X is the set of 7 plus, let me write that correctly, 3 over 5 divided by 2, and 7 over 2 minus 3 radical 5 over 2. All 3 of those are acceptable answers. Okay, I hope this was helpful. Please like and subscribe. Have an awesome day.
Subscribe.